Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 273, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is brought to you by Mud Pod Design House. At Mud Pod Design House, we know that too often business owners get in their own way of making a website. We make it easy to get a website for your business. Visit us at mudpoddesign.com. Now here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio.
We're back.
We're back after summer hiatus.
It just seems like it's over already, and I don't want it to be over already.
I walk into it thinking it's going to be this long, luxurious vacation, and look at this list of projects I can tackle, and then I end up really either tackling nothing until the last 2 weeks, and then I'm in a frenzy trying to get something done, or I try to tackle them all at the beginning, and in the last week I think, I didn't take a vacation.
Right. And there's so many maintenance things and stuff that we, don't seem to get to. And then we have hiatus. We're like, we can take the time off. But then we're like, oh, wait, we have newsletters to fix. We've got this thing to do. We've got that thing to do. We've got all this stuff that's all herbalism radio stuff. So it's not like, a comedian or somebody else that takes their hiatus on their podcast and they just go somewhere and do something or go on tour, I guess, or whatever. Maybe, I guess going on tour is work. But
they have a staff. I want a staff.
Yeah, we want a staff.
I want a staff.
So anyway, we're back, and it's still summer in the Great Pacific Northwest, and we've had quite the summer.
Yes, it has been a strange garden year here.
Everyone here that's listening has been up on current events. The Pacific Northwest, Portland, Eugene area, we had record heat in June, like the hottest it's ever been, ever in June recorded. It could have been hotter back, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, but we didn't know about it. But for the last 180 years, where they've been tracking weather, that was the hottest. It was 111, 110 here in Eugene. And we had a lot of people that we knew that their gardens really, they got burned. They got crisped up, and it was a thing, So,
yeah, gardening has been kind of strange and challenging this year. Yeah. Every seed that I planted, not a single seed that I planted actually grew. I've got, not everyone, because I think there's 3 or 4 eggplants and 1 melon plant that have grown.
But slowly.
But they look very stunted, and I will be absolutely floored if they manage to produce anything, even a flower, before the end of season. They're all much too small.
Well, the 1 melon plant is actually working now. I can see it is coming in, but it just seemed like it was sputtering and
You do realize that 1 melon plant, which is right now measuring maybe 12 inches across the whole of it, all 3 vines that have come up on it, should actually be more like 6 feet right now. Each vine should be 6 feet.
Why didn't you know that?
It should be a much larger plant than it is. Everything is just growing ridiculously slow that I've planted. On the other hand, I have a garden friend who's about 2 miles from our house, if that, and his seeds have gone just nuts. Everything has sprouted and it's producing. It started growing. He started squashes really early in the season for our area. Tomatoes have been early. Everything's early for him. Mm-hmm. And it's growing strong and healthy, gangbusters. On the other hand, his perennial plants didn't enjoy that heat. And he had a lot of things like on some of his roses, the heat weekend that we had, he had dehydrated roses. They dehydrated on the plant, despite the fact that he had been watering them. He was watering. He's a way better gardener than I am. He's meticulous about watering. He does it every day. And that was right in the middle of hay fever season, so I wasn't getting out very well. And the plants were getting the water that you gave them in the evening.
Yeah, I water them nightly or every other night.
Yeah, and the rules say you're not supposed to water them after dark. If you're going to water in the evening, it should be in the last 2 hours before dusk, and then in the mornings it's okay because you don't want water left on the leaves, and if there's water on the leaves before sunshine, there's all these rules about when to water, and they all have a lot of good reasoning. If you water at night, you're more likely to encourage molds and mildews. And if you water in the morning, late morning, midday, then you're more likely to get sunburn because the water will magnify the sun's rays and cause problems for your plants. And there's a whole bunch of rules. There's a lot of good reasons for them. We totally broke the rules because you water every night at dusk or after dark. Know.
Well, but I don't necessarily water all the leaves. I try to water the soil and the roots.
Yeah, but I've noticed the big, with the watering wand thing that you've got, that thing's terrific. But definitely to reach further away, you end up raising it higher and the plants get wet. But they're fine. We're not having problems. They're happy and they're healthy. And I've been shocked at how well our perennials did. They acted as if there had been no heat, which really surprised me.
Yeah, we didn't have any of the telltale signs. And if it would have been last year, we had a hit or miss watering, we probably had nothing left.
Right. Right. But, my garden buddy, he's watering every day too. And yet his perennials were so unhappy, but his seeds have been doing great.
Yeah, it has been a weird year.
It's been a strange year.
I think this is the year where people are finally going, yeah, there might be this climate thing might be real.
Yeah, I think that most of us can agree that our environment is changing, the weather is changing, which means the climate is changing. Mm-hmm. The place where it starts to get into people saying it doesn't exist and all of that is when you start looking at the politics. The why is it and what should we do about it? And can we do anything about it and all of that? That's where you get into the weirdness and the debate. But the reality is, many areas have way more heat than they should or way less heat than they should. Other areas shouldn't be having rain and they're flooding. Some areas where the rain should be, profuse is really drought.
Oh, yeah.
So the climate is changing, and this year is honestly no different from the past several years here in that it's getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, it's interesting how, we moved across the country 15 years ago, 16 years ago now, and just seeing, for us, because we were newcomers, we didn't have a baseline.
Right.
Our first year was our baseline.
Yeah.
And every year, has been so different. And, we've had a few wet years and a few years where people say it's normal, but so often people are like, this is not normal. And these are people that lived here their entire life. They grew up here. They're talking about how we don't get nearly the rain that we used to get. And we don't get, and the summers are really a lot warmer and drier than they've ever been.
Right.
Especially when you're looking at some of the plants that people can plant here now that you wouldn't even thought of doing that 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So that's your olives are coming in now. People are planting olive trees and groves because they can grow them here now. Certain grapes that they couldn't grow before, now they can grow them.
Yeah. They're growing them like with producing really good wines beyond Pinot Noirs.
Yeah.
Exactly. Pinot was the only wine grapes that you could reasonably produce here. And now their local vintners are producing really nice.
There's a variety of wine grapes that are here now that we didn't have. So those are all cool things, but, and I know like anything, change happens. It doesn't matter where it is. Change does happen, but it's amazing to me how fast it's happening. In our lifetime, we've seen this. That's 50 years when we've seen a massive amount of change. Yeah.
One of the things I've been wondering lately is there was a little ice age in Europe in the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
and I wonder if
early 1800s.
I wonder if this is how it felt to them that, are we walking into another ice age type of situation or something similar? Maybe it'll be a desert age instead of ice age, but whatever people in 1,000 years call it, I'm wondering if this is what it felt like is they were watching their environment change and every year you expect it to go back to what it was, but it doesn't. And it's a little bit, I don't know, off-putting. I don't know what to do here,
Well, yeah.
It's a little strange.
I don't know either. People think that we can technologically take ourselves out of it, with carbon scrubbers and all these things. There's lots of companies that are coming up with these things to help mitigate this, but we'll see. This is a tough one. It has to happen by the will of all people and not just individuals, because this is a bigger thing.
This is a global change.
This is a global thing that we're all dealing with, and
it is debatable. It could be that this change would be happening, perhaps not at the rate or precisely now, but it would happen anyway.
It is possible, but if you look at the and you've seen them, you look at the charts over from the industrial age to now,
right?
And as the carbon has gone up in the atmosphere, so has the temperature. It's almost hand in hand, and My biggest concern is that the biggest heat sink that we have is the oceans, and they're getting too hot. And if that starts to happen, then, we depend on them. Even if you're in the middle of the country, you depend on an ocean.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, anyway, I mean, it's just been a really weird summer weather-wise for around the country with massive droughts, water, like you said, too much water in some areas, not enough in other areas, and not where you can even say it's been a really cold summer here. No, it's been a really bloody hot summer. So, and the forest fires are, they're bigger this year than they were last year. They don't affect us.
In our area, on our coast.
Well, on our coast, yeah. They don't this year so far, they haven't directly affected you and I.
Sure.
But they're here.
They're here.
And they're just in different spots. Yeah. I mean, so, but that's all gonna, and what interesting thing is they're affecting the rest of the country now. So if you're listening to this now, you probably have a smoky sky and haze from fires in Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because it's already reached, it's all the way over to New York at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, we're back, and in our last show was we were talking with Rebecca, Rebecca Ingalls, and we were talking about community gardens.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun listening to her. She was so excited, and how she fell into it, and how it moved her, and what she's doing now out there. Yeah,
she's really wonderfully active. She's inspiring, really, when it comes down to thinking about how to garden, and even planting and taking care of the simple plants like the chives. I mean, I've got a little ball of chives, or a little clump, I should say, of chives in 2 different corners in my garden, in my little raised bed herb garden. And I look at them with appreciation for how simple they are. And, they're very culinary. But, like Rebecca said, they're a wonderful step into herbs and herbalism. And I remember when I was a child, that was one of the early herbs that my mom grew in her garden when she started looking at, she had a little mini herb garden, and, she started looking at the idea of herbs, and got a couple of books that she read a little bit about. She didn't go very far with it, but she grew some culinary herbs, and chives were among them, and it makes me smile.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's amazing how many different varieties of chives there are. Onion chives, garlic chives, that added a little bit of flair to whatever you're cooking. I always enjoy that. Yeah. I don't know what the medicinal properties of chives are, but I do know what I like them on my mashed potato or on my potatoes.
Chives are in the onion family, and they have the same types of
alum.
Yeah, they have the same types of properties that onions and garlics do.
Oh, so it's good for flus and colds.
Yeah, exactly. Good for good for killing off germs and fighting back any funguses or fungal issues. Mm-hmm. And, generally good for helping positively support your immune system, give it some energy.
Mm-hmm. Which is, what we all need right now, I guess.
I mean, reality is that a lot of the garden herbs, culinary herbs that we grow are all about generally supporting your immune system and your digestive system. That's the 2 primary things for all of them. Oregano, rosemary, sage, thyme, chives, bay leaf.
They're very, powerful in their own right. Everyone kind of thinks, just go to the market and buy the shillings or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, you start putting those things together, and you get your 4 thieves, and you get all these things, and the properties that rosemary has. It's just so much more than making a pork roast taste good or whatever it is, Yeah,
and a lot of the reasons that we use them in the foods that we do as we do is because they're good for aiding your digestion and building your immune system, fighting off whatever crud might be in your area. Mm-hmm. So we have them because they're medicinal. And they're foods, but they're also medicinal. And it's important to realize that all of your food is your medicine as well. And if you want to stay healthy, eating a good, healthy diet with lots of fresh herbs as a part of it is helpful.
We're excited to announce that Be Real Botanicals is opening here at the Real Herb Market. Brenda Bigelow makes the most luxurious and luscious botanical skin and body care blends. Just holding one in your hand feels like true wealth. We know you're going to love the way Be Real Botanicals herbal beauty products unleash the gorgeous star within. Find them at therealherbmarket.com/shop/www-berealbotanicals-com. When you were saying that, the first thing I had in my mind was these people that eat lots of processed food, lots of junk food that has none of those things in it.
Yeah.
None of those extras, none of those, and I said, yeah, no wonder why,
I mean, when we were young, we were, first we were in our 20s, and we didn't have a lot of cash to work with. And a lot of that cash had to go to the beer fund. Let's be honest. We ate a lot of not very fresh, very highly processed foods. We just did. And we lived in a climate where majority of the year it was hard to get fresh vegetables. I mean, you could go to the grocery store and get, your basics, but those had been trucked up from, across the country. So it wasn't really great even when you tried to eat fresh foods, but we didn't even try, and we had robust immune systems, and we like to blame the industry and the weather and all of that for why we weren't eating well, but we weren't eating well because we were just young and foolish. Many young people do this.
Well, and we weren't, that whole idea wasn't even passed down to us.
No, it hadn't been.
Our parents were like eschewing all of the wisdom that their parents had, depression parents and turn of the century parents were, the farming, the canning, the all of the natural things that they were doing, was just being like completely like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah. It was like the whole baby boom generation rejected anything really natural and went all for the processed. Somebody else did it for you.
Right.
Commercial.
So there was you didn't have to learn that skill set or even know that. So you, like in the summer when, in that area in the summer, you could grow herbs, you could grow all that stuff. You could dry herbs, you could put them in vinegar. You could do all these things that helped you preserve that because that's what you did when the weather was good.
Yeah.
But by the time that we came through there, if you will.
Yeah. When we were growing up.
No one was doing that.
Less so. I mean, my mom did have her little herb garden, and she dried some herbs, and she, did a little bit, incredibly small scale, not even quite enough to really keep our family in herbs and all of that. But, it was hobby. It was fun. She figured it out a little bit, but she could have done so much more.
Well, what's interesting is that...
And she was the oddball in our generation, of her generation.
Even my grandparents, they had a huge garden.
Mm-hmm.
Did not have any culinary herbs in that garden.
Right. Yeah, they lost that. The idea of food was like, they lost the art of the herb half of keeping a good diet.
And I was thinking about this too, because my mom likes to cook or liked to cook a lot. And, but I always remember she would always give her seasonings, but they were always dried and they're always out of the container. And, we could have easily where we lived, grown herbs. We had the ability, but I didn't know about it. My mom, no one. Who knows? It's interesting.
Yeah.
I know, you and I talked about what we were going to talk about the show, and we kind of moved on to this whole different angle of it. But it's interesting to talk about that idea of bringing back around to Rebecca and the community gardens and talking about herbs, and that being the garden is centered around herbs. Yeah. And so often community gardens might be a rose garden, might be something other like
flowers
that.
Or something pretty, or there's something food related, like,
right.
The standard crops, potatoes and corn and tomatoes and green beans.
But not around the herbs. And I think that's what really made her community garden interesting, was that it was specifically around herbs.
Yeah.
And I think that's also attracted a lot of specific people to them.
Yeah.
But that's the interesting part, is it's just, they're so easy to grow. I mean, geez, we don't even take really good care of our herbs. They do really well.
Yeah. My haphazard gardening skills are really lovely. They're happy with me.
I've got volunteer oregano, got volunteer thyme, volunteer, okay, hey, look at you.
Yeah, exactly.
We made spaghetti the other night. I walked out, I'm like, hey, I didn't see you, little oregano plant. Look at you.
Snip, snip, snip. And honestly, the snip, snip, snip that makes them happy. It makes them more robust. It causes them to grow stronger and healthier. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I love almost reading a recipe and it'll say, this much organic or like oregano,
a quarter teaspoon, and we're like, okay, 10 times that.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, and that's dried. Yeah. how can this even taste good?
Tablespoon.
Right. So
No.
I go out and I have like 2, 3, 4 sprigs, bring it in, strip them down, chop, 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 and have all this just really beautiful
Handful.
mound
Yeah.
of herbs that
Yeah.
of all the, when I make all that stuff and you make it too, I never go to you and say, there might be too much oregano in here.
No,
I've
it
never
doesn't
said
really
that.
happen.
However, though, if you overdo dry oregano,
yeah, you really
you
notice
notice it.
because dry oregano has more of a bitter flavor to it.
There's that bitter flavor to it.
It comes out.
Yeah, because all the it's interesting.
The
There's
volatile
no buffer
oils.
or something.
Yeah. Well, the volatile oils have started to evaporate out some, and the bitterness gets more concentrated as it dries.
Yeah, it's interesting. So so if your recipe calls for dried, you know what? Go find fresh.
If you can.
If you can. And I know you can go to the grocery and you can buy the fresh herbs in the plastic packs.
The fresh herbs in the plastic packs, it costs like $4 for one of those little packs.
And the only time
you need 2 of them to make one meal.
And the only time I've ever done that is when it's an herb that we don't have and I can't find it.
Right.
And that's when
like dill tops. For some reason, we have such a hard time getting dill to grow in our garden.
Right. Dill is so easy.
You would think so, but no. I always have a hard time with that one. It does not want to grow for me very well.
I know, and that was one of my favorite herbs because of some of the
dill
pickling that you can do,
and dill in the sauerkraut is so good.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great.
You need dill.
I wonder what I'm sure I could find this out. There's some interesting medicinal properties with dill that make it such a winner.
A carminative herb, so it helps it helps your digestion move along. It helps to trigger peristalsis in a healthy way. So peristalsis is the movement of your food through your gut or waste matter through your gut.
Right.
And it's done by a series of small contractions. And it's kind of like a coordinated small contractions. And dill helps to trigger that and smooth it so that it's, you don't get the cramping or anything like that. And it also helps to prevent gassiness. That's why it's used in colic formulas a lot for small children and babies, because by triggering and supporting peristalsis with carminative herbs like dill, you keep the digestive, you keep everything that's in there moving along. And if you keep it moving along, it doesn't have time to stop and begin to create gases through the fermentation, as it were, in your gut. So I don't know if it's actually fermentation that happens. I heard somebody long while ago, describe it as that, but when your digestion's not moving fast enough, you'll start to get gassiness.
Yeah, no, I think that's the proper term for it. It's the sugars and stuff it does. That's what happens.
Yeah,
I think that's the right term.
So that's why we have dill in things. It's part of why we like to include it, and it also has a certain amount of antibacterial and antimicrobial and antifungal properties as well. But
I always, would you say that I keep waiting? Okay, it's going to be this one. Is it all 3 of them?
The 3.
Is it all 3?
The 3. I didn't say antiviral.
No, you didn't. So there could be 4.
The only one I know of that seems to have antiviral properties is thyme. I'm not sure. The last time I looked up that information was quite a few years ago, and there was one study that I think I remember finding. I was looking specifically for what herbs are actually antiviral, because it's not easy to be antiviral. I mean, as you know, if you've got a virus and you go to the doctor and say, "Hey doc, I've got this virus, can you give me an antibiotic?" They'll say, "Yeah, no, nothing works. You just got to wait it out.
Wait it out.
We can treat your symptoms, but we can't kill the virus. Your body has to do that." So there are not that many herbs or plants that actually can kill viruses, but thyme had shown some effectivity on that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why whenever you have a illness and I give you that horrifyingly bad cough syrupy stuff that I try to lace with as much honey or sugar as possible to cover up the fact that it tastes awful, oftentimes you'll notice a healthy dose of thyme in there.
Yeah, I do know. I do notice that flavor.
Yeah, I usually make thyme tincture, and I try to make like a quart of it, a large portion of it.
Right.
Because it's a very versatile and highly medicinal herb when you concentrate it like that. And then when you put it in your food, you're helping just stave off and protect. So it's part of why we use thyme in our cooking as well as in our medicinal cabinet. some of our culinary herbs are really strongly medicinal, especially when you concentrate them.
Oh, yeah.
Rosemary, oregano, thyme, all three of those, sage. It's another one that's really strongly medicinal when you concentrate it.
Yeah, we're not talking pulling constituents. We're just saying the parts per million.
Yeah, turning it into a tincture, essentially, like
right.
something like that, or a vinegar.
Right.
Either of those concentrates it because you're using a lot of plant material in what is actually a relatively small amount of liquid. And then as the liquid soaks it up, it's kind of like when you mix as much sugar as you possibly can in that lemonade to get it to taste decent, to the point where you can't dissolve any more sugar into it and it's saturated.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're aiming to do with the tincture. You're getting the liquid to take on as many properties as possible from your thyme, for instance, or sage. And some of them, like sage, is one of those ones that has really strong medicinal properties to it all on its own. So there's a friend of mine a few years back, and she had been fighting off a cold, and the people around her, kids and everybody else was, had this cold that was, starting to hit them. And she was like, I can't get sick. I just can't. I can't do this right now. I don't have time for this. And she had a wonderful sage plant, just culinary sage, common sage. There wasn't anything special about it, out in her garden. And I told her, well, go out, pick a single leaf of sage, come in, boil the kettle, put it in your mug, put the sage leaf in the bottom of the mug, cover it with water. You're aiming for about 8 ounces or a cup. I don't remember. I think that's, if I remember right, that's 250 milliliters. It's either 250 or 500.
Mm-hmm.
I always get that. But whatever, just that small amount, put a cover over it, like a saucer on top of it. Let it stand for about 10 minutes or so, and then drink it. You don't have to eat the sage leaf at the end if you don't want to, but it's not going to hurt you. In fact, it'll probably help you to do so. And that usually will help stave off, if it is truly just the common cold, it'll often stave that off. And she did that, and she was like, wow, this is brilliant. And I said, once or twice a day, but all you need is one leaf. One leaf will do it because it's so strong.
Right.
And, it's not like she had special sage.
Special sage.
Okay.
Special sage. All right.
So yes, in terms of like climate change, and as we're watching the climate change and we're watching things happening around us in our environment that are beyond our control, one of the things I've been thinking about is how, as herbalists, it makes a lot of sense for us to be, yes, aware of our local herbs and use those as much as possible, but also be aware of the herbs that extend into the climates our climate is becoming.
Right. Like the vintners looking at different grapes, or the, people like that. What, if you can't grow a mild based like herb, like let's say parsley.
Right.
You can't grow that anymore because it's just going to dry out, or you can only grow it at a certain time of year.
Right.
Right. That maybe, like you said, you have to find the other ones other herbs that are more conducive to your new changing environment.
Yeah, we have in herbalism, I've seen a lot of, like, we have fads essentially. There's the only local, get to know your own plants, right. Natives only, for, that fad. Mm-hmm. And that'll gain strength and be a big, strong thing for a while. And then it'll slowly be replaced by the, look at this, big tradition herb, like Ayurvedic herbs. Oh, everybody's got to have Gotu Kola. That's the new miracle herb. And it doesn't matter if you don't live in a tropical or subtropical environment where it can grow. You've got to get your hands on it. And, everybody's got to have turmeric, even though turmeric doesn't grow in many of our areas. And
right.
So we go, and then, that fad will be the center stage for a while, and then the local native stuff will come back, and the local native stuff is all about, well, you shouldn't be your carbon footprint, and you should be taking care of your own and not having it go far away, and where you live, the herbs that are around you are the ones that will take care of you. And then you go back to the big traditions like Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, or whatever, traditional Western medicine, any of those, big ones. And, those herbs are great. They do all these things. You don't, if you know your constitution, then, You'll pick the right ones, and they don't have to be local. And I'm looking at the climate and saying, well, maybe it's wise to kind of look at both and know both, because what's growing here now may not be growing here in 10 years.
Right.
So having a good awareness of what grows when and where, and not just focusing only on the locals that you've traditionally used, but also looking beyond that. Not just focusing on stuff that can be carted across the world, because that does increase carbon footprint, but also being aware of what is growing now in your area, what could grow in your area next year.
Yeah, it is. Keep a weather eye almost on it to see how, it's like interesting, because it's like year to year, you don't feel the change, but over a period of time, you feel the change.
Yeah.
So
when we moved out to the Pacific Northwest, it was described by local people as sort of like a rainforest, in that we had that level of rain, and in the winter you were supposed to have like a month of rain where every day there was at least misty rain, and they had different descriptions, the down rain, the sideways rain, they had all kinds of different descriptions, just like people from far Arctic regions have 1,000 different ways of describing the snow.
Right.
I mean, that was how it was here. And now 15 years later, I can say I don't remember the last time we had an actual month of rain like that.
Yeah, it's been a while that we've actually had a solid month of every day you get up and it's raining, and I mean, it's just like the weather really doesn't change. It's constant cloud rain. I mean, now I remember moving here, people talked about taking sun breaks. When the sun would pop out, everyone would leave the office and get a little sun. And here now it's like, well, we'll go.
You don't need them.
A week or two in February, and we have this amazing sunshine, and almost like an Indian summer in February. A lot of times it's like our prelude to our spring. And I've noticed, the rains have stopped earlier. They used to go deep into April, solid, into April, and then May would start to break. That pattern would break up, but that's when and then all these plants and produce coming in.
Yeah.
And June was that changeover month, but man, it's just not. I mean, like this year, we had 90 degrees days at the end of April. We had really hot weather.
Yeah, we had strangely hot
really
weather.
Early.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't give the native plants the ability to replenish themselves.
No, it's hard on the native plants because they adapted or they evolved with certain expectations that are not currently being met,
right.
Shall we say.
How long did it take them to evolve for those current expectations? And then now they're not there.
Yeah.
And they're not there. They're going to move quickly on their own too, or they'll just leave.
Yeah.
Which is, what you see, which is, again, more of the climate migration, whether it's plants or flora and fauna, or it's people. I mean, people are doing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just, I'll be interested to see how the fall plays out. I mean, last year we were sorely disappointed with the level of moisture in the woods, and the fact that when you and I went mushrooming mid-October, mushrooming has typically historically been, the forest at this point's wet, it's moist, it's foggy. You go out there and it's like this whole feeling. It was dry, it was warm. You barely find the mushrooms. I mean, you barely find mushrooms.
Yeah, it wasn't a great mushrooming season that last year.
And we haven't, year after year, we have not had good mushrooming seasons.
And the smoke and the fires certainly didn't help last year. I'm hoping for better this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can do is hope, because I don't think I'm moving right now. So.
No, probably not. Yeah.
If anything, I might go further west to the coast.
Right.
But anyway. All right. Well, with that,
put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA. They're not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.